Thank you for stopping by. We are going to start on our blanket today. This is going to be called Heather's Cozy Throw. That will be at the very beginning of the titles of all of this series of tutorials, just so that way it will be easier for you to find. And then I will have the stitch title after it. We're going to start with a mock rib. That's what you're looking at right now. It looks great with a smooth yarn and even a slightly to medium textured yarn. This one has almost a slightly boucle feel to it, and I love that with this as well. So there's a couple things that we really need to discuss before really diving in here. Now, I just know on a 10.5 needle that I really like 175 stitches all the way up to about 190 as far as the width of the blanket goes. Now, if you want to have a tutorial on how to make a gauge and then calculate it out, I'd be more than happy to put a tutorial up for you. But since I like the number of stitches, and I've already done this blanket 3 times, I decided just to choose an average number of 185 stitches for this project. So the reason I'm telling you this is because a lot of times you'll see patterns have a multiple of and then a plus number, or just a multiple of. I really wanted to show you how you're going to figure out how many stitches you need when you're changing patterns. So in this case, we need to know how many stitches we're going to be casting on. Now, I know that I want an average of about 185 stitches, so I'm going to put in 185 divided by 4. That gives us 46 1/4. So what I'm going to do is clear it out again and say 46 times 4. That gives us 184. So that is the repeats. In order to come out evenly, you need 184 stitches for the pattern to work. Now, the +3 always accommodates for the border, so you want to include those. You add them to your multiple number. So we have 184 stitches. We add 3, that would be 187. 187 is what I casted on. So from here we're going to start the pattern. It's very, very easy. There's only 2 rows in this pattern. I started it so you can see what it looks like. See if that looks like a good border to you. It starts us off and gives us a nice texture. And basically the way this blanket's going to work for the most part is when you change yarns, you change patterns. It keeps it nice and interesting, and it adds to your skill. Although if you're using textured yarn, sometimes you will end up doing stockinette or reverse stockinette, so some of them will be repeats. So what we're going to do to begin is knit 3. And this is row 1. You start with knitting 3. So we knit 1, 2, 3. Then we bring our yarn in front and we slip 1. Then it says to knit 3. To knit 3, the yarn is behind, so we bring the yarn back. And then we knit that 3. 1, 2, 3. It says repeat from star, and this little star that we had in the pattern was where we brought our yarn in front, we slipped 1, and then we knit 3. So I put the yarn back, knit 1, 2, 3. Now we repeat again. So we bring the yarn forward, we slip 1, bring the yarn back, and knit 3. You're doing this all the way across the row. I am going to continue on so we can keep this tutorial, reasonable in length, and I will return on the row back for you to see what we're doing on the next row. I wanted to mention to you before we start the next row that the end of row 1 ends with a knit 3. So if you end with knit 3 and you had 187 stitches cast on, then you have done the first row correctly. And you'll want to pay attention to the first couple of rows, but after that it gets easy to tell where you are. I'll show you after I walk through what we do for the second row. For the second row, we start by knitting 1. And from here, There's that little star. Then it says with yarn in front, so we bring our yarn forward, slip one, then we knit 3. So we bring the yarn back and we knit 3 stitches. Notice after knitting the first one, the second one, we have a knit facing forward to us. Otherwise it's like garter stitch, except for this one row, which is the row that we slipped previously in the row before with the yarn in front. That's what creates that nice knit facing forward. That's always going to be the center of your knit 3. So once you have 2 rows, you should be able to start seeing that. After knit 3, we repeat from star. So we bring the yarn forward, slip a stitch, bring it back so we can knit our next 3. And like I said, see that center stitch? That center stitch, we see a nice knit all the way up and down in a line. The third stitch is the stitch right after it. We bring our yarn forward and slip one. Bring our yarn back so we can knit 3. Once you have 2 rows, when you start the third row, you should be able to start seeing that, where you're going to have that line coming straight up, that line which is a stitch of knit all the way down. That's always going to be your middle of your knit 3. So I hope that helped, and that is our very first stitch for this blanket. And I wanted to mention something else while we're doing this. This particular skein is only 98 yards, so I'm going to go ahead and do 2 skeins for this first one. Now, basically, more or less in this blanket, you use a yarn till you just about run out, and then you switch colors. Now, that works pretty well, especially with the novelty yarns, because there's different amounts of, there's different weights, and so the skeins will be different. But there's some instances, like here you see that I have one yarn with just 2 rows. And that's just to give it more depth and a little bit of visual interest. So when we do that, I will let you know when I'm switching, but I wanted to let you know that you can do that as well. So you might want to have a thicker area, a couple thinner ones, and then another thicker one. So you don't always have to go till you run out of yarn, especially if you're using very similar yarns right next to each other. You can also, for instance, if I wanted to, I could have had reverse stockinette in this, another yarn, and then come back with just another couple rows of the previous one, if you're wanting to make sure you use up some of that yarn, in case you're not using a whole skein. So I hope that this was helpful, and next time we'll be working on the second yarn. This was mock rib, which I love as the border. I hope you do too, and when we come back, we'll do our second stitch. Thanks, guys.